Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. A Saskatoon woman facing charges in the United States and Canada has been returned to this country. Dawn Walker spent the past 2 weeks in federal custody in Oregon, where she was arrested for allegedly using false identification to cross the border with her 7-year-old son. According to the Canadian press, a U.S. judge was sympathetic to the 48-year-old author and chief executive officer of the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations in Saskatchewan. A U.S. federal public defender told the court that Walker is the victim of intimate partner abuse and, as a result, has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. The judge told Walker that she hopes she would be able to see her son soon. She is facing charges in Canada that include public mischief and child abduction in contravention of a custody order. Michelle OBonsawin, an Indigenous Ontario judge, fielded questions from parliamentarians in Ottawa this week. She's the first Indigenous person to be nominated to Canada's Supreme Court and had much to say about the justice system and Indigenous people. Here's Fraser Needham with that.
It was OBonsawin's first opportunity to address the public since her nomination to the Supreme Court of Canada last week, and she chose to speak her opening remarks in her traditional Abenaki language. OBonsawin shared her story and how her background and experience make her a good fit for the Supreme Court. And here's what she had to say about the implementation of Gladue principles in legal representation and sentencing.
And that comes back to education of judges, where it's important for everyone in the legal community, not just judges, but lawyers also, to understand what it means to represent an Indigenous person and to ask the questions, because unfortunately at times they'll take the client as they come and they don't ask more information about the index offense and what happens.
OBonsawin also spoke about the high percentage of Indigenous women in Canadian prisons in response to a question from Senator Kim Pate.
I think it was Dr. Zinger's last report that showed that Indigenous women are close to 50% of the incarceration rates, and we're less than 5% of the population. And you and I have worked on this in the past when you were with the Elizabeth Fry Society and I was general counsel at the Royal, where we would face these issues where we had Indigenous people in the system. I think that education is the key.
And she had these words of advice for young Indigenous women thinking of pursuing a career in law and how far it might take them.
But at the end of the day, if you work hard and your heart's in it, you could go and do what you want. And I'm hoping that young people, female Indigenous women also, will see that anything is possible if you set your mind to it.
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Well, it's now official. On Friday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau appointed OBonsawin to the Supreme Court of Canada. And with that, she becomes the first Indigenous person to occupy a seat on Canada's highest court. OBonsawin, as we said, is Abenaki. She's from the Odanak First Nation in Quebec, but she grew up in a Franco-Ontario town near Sudbury. OBonsawin officially takes up her new appointment on September 1st. Well, the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation is adding a new member to the team this fall, but it's a familiar face. The Honourable Murray Sinclair will be a special advisor and elder in residence. He is Manitoba's first Indigenous justice and the former Chief Commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. In his new role, Sinclair will provide Indigenous law guidance and other expert advice. Sinclair will also assist the University of Manitoba's Faculty of Law and supports an ongoing journey and meeting the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action. The federal government announced the reinstatement of Canada's chief nursing officer at a press conference on Tuesday morning. The position will be filled by registered nurse Lee Chapman. She is going to provide advice to Health Canada on workforce planning, long-term and home and palliative care. That position was originally created in 1968, but it was eliminated by the Harper government in 2012. Canadian Indigenous Nurses Association CEO Marilee Noguesiak said that this reinstatement is welcome.
This is an exciting time to be in Indigenous health across the country. This is an exciting time to become a nurse in this country. This is an exciting time to blend traditional approach with Western trained credentials. This is an exciting time to share our knowledge with our allies, our partners, and our nursing lead organizations.
Well, a Catholic church in northern Alberta has been destroyed in a fire that RCMP are calling suspicious. The church was a historic site for the Dene and Cree communities living in the hamlet of Fort Chippewa. APTN's Tamara Pimentel has that.
Church is on fire, completely destroyed.
It was 3 a.m. on Thursday when Chief Alan Adam of the Athabasca Chippewan First Nation got the call. The Nativity of Blessed Virgin Church was engulfed in flames.
Over 100 years in history, gone up in flames. This was uncalled for. That church was very important. It was there for over 100 years. It had a significant history. Could it go closer?
Chief Adam live streamed this video as fire crews struggled to battle the blaze. He says the flying community of Fort Chippewan is now down a fire truck because one of the few in the community flipped over on its way to the fire and is now out of commission. No injuries were reported, and RCMP say the cause of the fire is unknown, but it's being investigated as suspicious. Adams says while the relationship between Indigenous peoples and the Catholic Church is complicated, the loss of this church is a blow to the community.
It was uncalled for. It was not unnecessary to happen. You don't take your frustration and anger and disappointment on the house of Lord, and a lot of history went through there. And a lot of our elders' memories that are in my head that will only be there now because every time I walk or go across, there won't be a church standing there. So a lot of fond memories that are running through my head right now.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
A Mi'kmaq fisherman is facing charges for harvesting eels after the Department of Fisheries put a temporary ban on collecting them. But he recently argued before a Nova Scotia provincial court judge that he has a constitutional right to do so despite that ban. Angel Moore explains.
Corey Francis of the Acadia First Nation harvested eels like the ones in this file footage. They're also called elvers. But he allegedly did it after the Department of Fisheries issued a temporary halt to catching eels less than 10 centimeters long for conservation purposes in an order issued on April 27, 2020. Francis appeared at the Bridgewater, Nova Scotia Provincial Court earlier this week, where he claimed to have a right to fish for a moderate livelihood and food, social, and ceremonial purposes.
A lot of things that has occurred in Indigenous fisheries are and remain at issue, and I've always promoted a better way to deal with them, and I guess I can say that being in court is not the best way, and I'll leave it there for now.
Francis intends to use the Constitution to justify harvesting elvers despite the DFO ban, where Section 35 states Aboriginal and treaty rights are recognized and affirmed. Judge Paul Scoville will decide later if Francis can use his constitutional argument.
Set a trial date for an Aboriginal treaty rights trial in lieu of agreeing to a statement of facts to the offences alleged by the Crown regarding the harvesting of elvers.
Francis is representing himself, and the court is giving him more time to seek legal advice.
I think a smart person understands that when they need help. And I'm not a lawyer, I'm a layman, and for that reason alone, it would just be smart when you're dealing with constitutional issues to seek what help you can get.
Francis will be back in court on October 19th to set a new date for a trial. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Bridgewater, Nova Scotia.
2 camps located on the grounds of Manitoba's legislative buildings are up against an eviction notice, but well past their original deadline to vacate. But the occupants say that they're going to stay put. Here's Sav Jonesa with more.
Manitoba's legislature is the site of 2 camps. Both were waiting with bated breath as the deadline for their eviction neared. The East Side encampment was formed last May in response to the findings of unmarked graves at former residential school sites. They were set to be dismantled by 12 o'clock noon on August 23rd. but organizers decided to stay put for their cause, continuing their sacred fire until all residential school sites are searched and all unmarked graves are found.
Let us be until all the sites are searched. Let us be here. Respect us being here. Respect our sacred fire going.
The eviction order comes from the Manitoba government and is in line with the new legislation created earlier this year specifically regarding encampments on the legislative grounds. However, the occupants believe that their demonstration, its cultural purpose, and their need for peaceful healing should not be condemned if the province values reconciliation.
Again, we're going to tell you where, we're going to tell you when, and we're going to tell you how to do your ceremonies, how to practice your culture. And if they don't like it happening right beside the building, then they say, well, we're evicting you.
As the impending eviction loomed, the number of supporters for the camp grew. People waited peacefully, and an hour past the noon deadline for the camp to be dismantled, police were still not present. It became known that the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs and the leader of the opposition party, Wab Kinew, called for a delay in the eviction of the encampment, stating that the eviction of any peaceful camp does not support reconciliation between the province and First Nations.
The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs have asked the province to hold off on this camp. And someone will be come from the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs to come and talk to us. And in the meantime, they've asked the province to hold off.
They now have until at least this Friday, August 26th, to leave the premises before the eviction is enforced. A small but encouraging win for the determined demonstrators. Sav Jonza, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And they indeed still were there yesterday. Well, we need to take a break, but still ahead, education in a Quebec community marries cutting-edge technology with tradition. We're going to have that when we come back. Welcome back. A school in the Listigouche First Nation in Quebec is bringing together centuries of traditional knowledge and marrying it together with cutting-edge technology. Amelia Fournier has more about this new curriculum.
These Listigouche teens already graduated high school, but their outdoor education started this summer.
I think it's important that people, we learn about what they had to do back in the day, considering it was kind of taken from us, from the residential school and everything.
If it's dry grass, it'll burn once we have a flame, but it won't ignite.
Jonathan Barnaby and Travis Barnaby are from the Alagsid Gitbu School, or AGS. They are teaching these students to start a fire and to shoot an arrow before they go off to university.
I really enjoy coming to work every day and doing this kind of things with students and working with pretty excellent staff.
This is where my parents, my whole family taught me about outdoors, so anytime that I'm outdoor to show the kids, to show anybody, it's a pretty well a blessing for me.
AGS goes up to grade 8, but the school also organizes outdoor education programs for adults who didn't get the chance to participate.
Hey!
When I was a kid, we didn't have any of this, and I've never shot an arrow, I've never made a fire, and I'm 18, so I think it's good for kids to learn, especially my sister. She did it last year.
Students learn all kinds of traditional Mi'kmaq skills.
Perfect. You got it. A little bit more. No, you got it. That's a light.
From tapping maple trees to snowshoeing to drum making.
You name it, we've tried it. Anything that's happening in our community, we're trying to bring it into the classroom, trying to find a way to share that knowledge and to feel comfortable and confident in where they come from and their Mi'kmaq identities.
It's growing now. We got Parker with us, so it's all the technology, so we have both the best worlds, I think, because technology and we have the outdoors.
This setup here is for our 3D scanner.
Ryan Parker is the STEAM educator for AGS. STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Parker works closely with the Mi'kmaq outdoor educators so the students can integrate technology with traditional teachings.
We work in a team to show that two-eyed seeing, right? Like we're trying to blend both worlds because our students are going to have to walk in two worlds. Right?
Place the mechanism wheel rollers.
AGS started the STEAM program last year. The program is meant to let students experiment with technology in a creative way.
This is our creative media lab.
AGS's lab and workshop has 3D printers, laser cutters, drones, a sound booth, and more. Parker is originally from the neighboring New Brunswick community of Campbellton, but he has been with AGS for 11 years.
Really what we're trying to do here is give them an opportunity to be to try something new, and if they like it and they're passionate about it, to dig a little bit deeper, and it's hands-on, and these are transferable skills.
The program is funded by the school, but Parker says that the program is looking to increase its own source funding by selling earrings and feather boxes made with the equipment.
We buy it in pieces and we use a laser cutter to cut that out and then put it onto the earrings.
Parker says the STEAM program also looks to support land-based activities.
The outdoor educator was doing his maple syrup lessons and tapping trees. He didn't have enough taps for the trees, so what we tried, we got some students to design taps. So 3D print the taps and see what would work. And really that's what we want, right? And that thinking is cross-curricular, but it's also a way that design thinking is what we want our students to do. We want them to try something, and if it fails or it doesn't work, we want them to try again.
Now you're a little bit far.
That trial and error approach is also used in outdoor ed, and students feel that they're taking part in Mi'kmaq culture by
just keep everything alive, keep showing other people, so it keep building off of other generations to other generations.
Emilia Fournier, APTN National News, Listigush, Quebec.
We've got to take one more break, but when we come back, a Manitoulin Island First Nation has become a lab for protecting at-risk plants and animals. We're going to take you there. Stay with us. Wikwemikong unceded territory on Manitoulin Island in Ontario has become a lab for protecting species at risk, but it's also creating learning opportunities for researchers outside the community. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
A black ash has between 7 and 9 leaflets, such as here, as versus a white ash. It only sometimes has 5.
Theodore Flamand knows this area like the back of his hand. For the past 18 years, he's been involved with a research project. He says it was a request from the elders.
I think originally it started off like we didn't have information what was on the land, and that was 18 years ago.
Since then, they've managed to document and protect 14 species at risk, including wolves, snakes, and turtles in the oak savannas and wetlands.
All the turtles are listed, which is the blandings, painted, mapped, and the snapper. So we have 3 of them here, and the one we have over our sister reserve in Killarney. So we have 4.
Flamand says areas like this are more important now than ever. That's why for the past 2 years, it's been used as an outdoor education center.
If you go to a school and say, I'm here to teach you about species at risk, it doesn't work. You may have their train of thought for maybe 15 minutes, and that's it. So that's just something that the elders wanted, was a setting like this where we could teach them about all the plants and that is here, as well as species at risk. And we found in the last 2 years that it works, that they're more keen on species at risk now.
He's hoping to share the knowledge with outside communities. That's why this group has come from Guelph.
That's great to do the nursery stuff right in the same spot where they're...
It won't be me or Glenn or George doing it. It'll be a community thing.
Justine Richardson is the director of the Arboretum at the University of Guelph.
It's such a biodiverse space, and there's so many species that are only found here or are found here in numbers that really can sustain the populations, and it's so important, the work that they're doing here. for learning, for protection of the species, for learning, for training the next generation of young people to know and love and protect the natural world around us.
She says the work they've done is amazing.
We've seen so many things. We caught a glimpse of a rattler, but didn't get to it. Was too shy. We're, of course, as an arboretum, we're especially excited about plants, and we saw Gattinger's agellinus, which is an endangered species with a beautiful little pink flower that's only found here. And we saw a lot of it yesterday in the spot where we went. We went with Theodore to an area where he is doing survey for Massasauga rattlers.
According to Flamand, when the project is complete, there will be about 15 acres of protected areas on the reserve and a teaching area at the marsh. And at Francis, APTN National News, Wikwemikong.
A First Nation youth is helping Indigenous artists get their work out there virtually. It's an online market called So Wish, and hope is to increase exposure and create some more sales for them. Here's Annette Francis again with that one.
If Jessica McKenzie isn't at her daytime job, she can be found here, beading. She learned it just before the pandemic hit.
My sister and I, we actually learned from an elder. So once we learned from her, it was very difficult, not super relaxing. However, we pushed through it. And then we started doing earrings and pins, and we just found that it was truly a great way to show off where we're from.
The Cree artist has a lot of products to prepare to be sold on a new virtual Indigenous marketplace called Shawish. Amanda Bernard launched it earlier this week.
I have a lot of Indigenous friends who are beaders, and I work at a foundation where I work with other Indigenous youth. So I saw all these Indigenous products that were being created, but not really a platform that displayed them as much as I would like them to be. So I decided to create Shawish. And the special thing about Shawish is that it's absolutely free for vendors.
She sees it as an opportunity to promote Indigenous arts from across the country.
Right now, I even have a lot of non-Native people come up to me and ask me, where can I buy beading, or where can I buy this? Or I have non-Native people coming up to me and telling me stories about them purchasing beading and then finding out, or purchasing orange shirts from a non-Native person that was promoting that it was Native, but it wasn't. So this kind of solves that issue as well, because with Shawish, we actually verify all our sellers, so you're definitely helping a First Nation person directly.
Bernard has spent months preparing for the launch and is excited with the response. Already in just 4 days, 10 vendors have registered, including Mackenzie.
I think Shawish was a fantastic idea, and it really allows myself as an Indigenous vendor to show off some of my creations. And of course, there's other platforms where maybe Indigenous artists don't get that type of visibility. However, Shawish truly allows myself and other Indigenous creators to really be proud of the work that we have created.
Anyone interested in registering or checking out the site can go to shawishmarket.com. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Toronto.
Well, perfect timing. That is all the news I have for you for APTN News Weekend. Now I can go shopping on Shawish. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here on Monday.